Mondo cool. That's right, boys. Mondo cool.
Bullet Witch is a third-person shooter set in a post-apocalyptic setting. This developer, being well known for their weirdness, but not their third-person shooters, decided to strive for an experimental title, especially considering that this is an early generation 360 game. This game was developed by Cavia and published by Atari. The story of Bullet Witch is nearly non-existent. It's the end of the world, you play as a witch named Alicia, and you gotta go kill things. That's pretty much it. The story is clearly an excuse for the gameplay, but even then it manages to detract from the experience for the simple fact that certain things aren't explained at all. At the very least, games with stories that exist solely for an excuse for the gameplay typically have some rhyme or reason to them as to who you're playing as and why, and what the conflict is. It may not be compelling stuff, but it at least is there to have you not think about it that deeply. This game instead has many questions that could have been easily answered that just fucking isn't. Who is this omnipotent-like character that keeps speaking to Alicia? Why does he help her and give her spells? Why and how did Alicia become a witch? Is it that character I just mentioned that made her a witch? Why did he do that? Why does he keep certain spells from her? Where did she get her weapon? Literally the only thing in the entire game that gets any adequate explanation is how there are suddenly monsters and why the apocalypse happened. Everything else is literally thrown up in the air. There are mainly three characters in the story: Alicia, the disembodied character that only speaks to Alicia, and Maxwell Cougar, an officer in the Resistance, a group that has banded together to fight against the monsters. Ironically, the most likable character, being Maxwell himself, is literally completely irrelevant to the story. The game could have easily existed without him, and not much of the story would have been significantly changed. Due to the short nature of the game and the very few cutscenes, none of the characters or the story is adequately fleshed out. Bullet Witch looks like shit. Even taking into consideration that this is an early generation 360 title, it still looks really bad compared to other games that came out around the same time, such as Baten Kaido's Origins, Dead Rising, and Dirge of Cerberus, two of which are ironically previous generation titles that still managed to look visually more impressive despite running on inferior hardware. The shadow effects are particularly bad in this game, and they just look pixelated beyond belief. The animations are also really choppy, and the particle effects are a joke. The supposed strongest attack in the game, lightning, just looks awful. The environments are all very dull. None of the levels have any proper identity beyond the generic city level or subway level. There's just no personality to them. Music in this game doesn't know when it wants to make itself known or not. There are times where there's literally no music playing at all, for no real discernible reason. What songs are in the game are mostly dull as well. The only song I actually enjoyed was Vanishing Sky, which plays during the intro. It's actually a pretty good song with some nice soft vocals. Otherwise, the soundtrack, when it actually decides it wants to be a part of your gaming experience, adds very little. Since there aren't many cutscenes in the game, there isn't a lot of voice acting. But for what there is, it's okay. Some voices are actually pretty bad, but others are at least passable at best. For all my complaints so far, I can forgive all of that if the game were fun to play. I can deal with a non-existent plot. I mean, I like Dynasty Warriors, for Christ's sake. I can deal with poor graphics. I can deal with subpar music. I'll play my own music, that's fine. But you know what I can't forgive? This game just not being fun to play. Literally the only thing I actually genuinely enjoyed about this game was the upgrade system. It's not even that the system is deep or anything. It just served to somewhat spice up the experience. Aside from that, I have a huge list of complaints. Controls are the most difficult thing to convey adequately, so trust me when I say that the controls are simply clunky. One of the supposed main features of the gameplay is that Alicia is a witch and that she can use spells in battle. I actually really like this idea and concept, but the problem is that the game just does nothing with it. Most of these spells are fucking useless. I mostly only ever used lightning and very rarely used anything else, because usually when I tried to, these spells would just have weak effects and would be nowhere near as effective as me just simply shooting the enemy. Which begs the question, what the hell is the point of these spells if just shooting the enemy is a more effective method? If I had a variety of different spells that were useful in different situations, it could have been great, but sadly just shooting everything is just the most effective option, made the game mostly tedious to play. Not to mention, these enemies that you get to face are all basically the same. The difficulty in this game was wildly inconsistent. The game is either a complete breeze or you're dying constantly from cheap one-hit kills. If this game wasn't subpar enough on its own, its cheap deaths simply make it infuriating to play. Whether it was falling off a fucking plane or shit flying at me from off screen or what have you, this game truly tested my patience at times. Now, I love a good challenge, but I hate cheapness, and the game definitely suffered from this on more than one occasion. Well, getting off that, I also generally felt that the environments in this game were just a bore to explore. There was potential to at least hide secrets, maybe alternate paths and ways to gain skill points so I can upgrade my stuff by, I don't know, maybe finding items. No, the levels are just simply filled with nothing and aren't any fun to explore at all. Finally, the bosses suck. Bosses fit into a very simple and predictable pattern that you just need to follow, and that's really all there is to them. Hell, there are only 2 bosses in the whole fucking game. Speaking of which, this game is extremely short. I guess I should consider it a good thing for my sake that this game is so short, because I didn't have to suffer through it for that long. But this length is just simply unacceptable. There are only 6 stages and they're not very long at all. I could have forgiven it if there was tons of side content, things to find or, secrets to uncover. But like I just said, there isn't. The levels are just completely devoid of anything to do in them aside from going to point A to point B. The game even knows how short it is and tries to artificially lengthen itself by putting a completely arbitrary and contrived barriers that you need to take down by killing these weird brain things that float in the air. There are even times that if you see a barrier but there's no brain creature to kill, the game literally forces you to kill all the enemies in the area, and then all of a sudden the brain creature will poof into existence. I can only imagine if the game didn't pull cheap tricks like this to artificially lengthen itself, it would have been even shorter. Bullet Witch is a bad game, but it's not simply any old bad game. It was a game with promise. There are genuinely interesting ideas in this game that, if handled by a proper developer, maybe someone like Platinum Games instead, we could have actually gotten a really fun and amazing game even. Instead, we're treated with a boring plot, awful visuals, bland music, tedious and downright cheap and infuriating gameplay. I got this for $5, and guess what? I still feel ripped off. This has been Shintai, everyone. Take care. Shameless self-promotion, yeah. So I royally messed up in the previous shameless self-promotion. I put the audio in the wrong channel and it ended up being really, really low and you couldn't hear me. Hopefully this doesn't happen this time. That's what happens when you edit things at like 3 in the morning. Now this review was requested by my little buddy LordChaos. I hope this review was to your liking, my friend. And since I was talking about the previous shameless self-promotion with bad audio, why don't you go ahead and check that video out anyways, because I'm shameless like that. And since I had really no third-person shooters I reviewed, let's just throw in another game I reviewed recently, Atari, Esha, and Logi, because I love Gust. Anyways, fuck this game. This game is really shit. Fuck you for requesting it, LordChaos. Goddamn. Ugh. I'm out.